With the 2024 presidential election just a couple weeks away, voters are going to decide between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. The outcome of the election will certainly have wide-ranging implications for domestic and foreign policy as well as prophetically. Well, because of that, we're going to discuss a Kamala Harris victory. What would that look like on this edition of the Endtime Show? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. I do thank you for joining me on this edition of the Endtime Show. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 9 says this, "But know this, that in the last days perilous times are going to come. Men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasures rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And from such people turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Just as Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men with corrupt minds, disapproved concerning the faith, but they will progress no further, for their folly will be manifest to all, also as theirs also was." So it seems like it's saying here that in the end time, things are going to be the opposite of what they should be, what the Bible would lay out as doctrinal and principles and things, that the end time is going to be kind of like the opposite of that in society. And so I want to talk about that today because we've got an election staring us in the face. I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I'm going to do some deep dives into some of these issues today because what are we now? What would we be, 12 days away? And it kind of looks like, when you look into some of these issues, that they're diametrically opposed to the Word of God. So let's look at this, what's going on today at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. There were two Christian students, Grant Beth and Luke Pulaski, and they interrupted Vice President Kamala Harris. She was speaking, and they shouted, "Christ is King and Jesus is Lord." And this is reported by New York Post, everybody. And Harris responded to them. You can go watch the video on YouTube in different places. They said, "Christ is King, Jesus is Lord." And Vice President Harris responded to them and said, "You guys are at the wrong rally. I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street." Of course, everybody just peals of laughter. They applauded. But if you think about that, they said, "Jesus is Lord." And she says, hold on, guys. You're at the wrong rally. What do you do with that? It's like it's totally backwards the way it should be. When I went to see Trump on Monday night, he was talking about, now again, I'm going to tell you, I don't agree with everything Trump has done in his life and all that other stuff. But I will tell you, Franklin Graham spoke. His son Eric Trump spoke. Dr. Ben Carson spoke. Paula White spoke. There were many people that spoke, and then, of course, President Trump came out. However, when they all spoke, they prayed in Jesus' name. Franklin Graham prayed in Jesus' name. He had the whole group pray collectively together. All of them without fail, talked about God, God's role in society. Trump gave God glory for saving his life at Butler, Pennsylvania, when he was shot. Trump went through it in great detail, and he said, I felt like something pushed me to the ground. They were giving God glory. Eric Trump gave God glory for saving his dad's life, and that God spared his life because he had a reason. And at one point, Donald Trump said something. It was either Donald Trump or Franklin Graham. I can't remember which one. But the entire crowd, thousands of people, started chanting, Jesus, 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 Jesus. But yet at a Kamala rally, somebody said Jesus is Lord, and she said, I think you're at the wrong rally. You should go at the smaller one down the street. So it's kind of like part of this whole thing is it's almost in reverse. It's going the exact opposite way, the way it should go here in America. And so I'm going to talk about that because I think we need to know, because I've seen some videos, watched some things, read some things, and some people really don't know where Kamala Harris is coming from. And so I wanted to do some deep dive into some of these issues, and that's what we're going to do on today's program, kind of what America would look like under a Kamala Harris administration. First, let me mention Birch Gold. You know, there is a lot at stake in this upcoming election. Regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy, it's already been lit. Even 4 years of a conservative president, it's not going to be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion in national debt. And if the left wins, it's certainly going to be like throwing gas on a dumpster fire, right? You don't have too much control over the election outcome, but you can do right now and protect your savings by diversifying into gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. For millennia, excuse me, I'm dealing with allergies today, big time. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can protect you now. Birch Gold can help you convert an IRA or a 401k into an IRA in physical gold, tax-free and penalty-free, doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying of gold, of the U.S. dollar, the buying power of U.S. dollars has declined, and the price of gold has increased 40%. Is that a coincidence? No, of course not. Visit birchgold.com/endtime. Get your free info kit on gold and trust Birch Gold to protect your savings. Visit birchgold.com/endtime today. Also, I wanted to mention that, and this is my last time that I'll be able to mention it because I'll be traveling up there this weekend, tomorrow, is that my wife and I, Saturday evening only, will be at the Eastern Washington University, the Pence Union Building, 926 Elm Street in Cheney, Washington. It's about 15 or 20 minutes south of Spokane, Washington. That's going to be this coming Saturday, October 26th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm going to be teaching the Green Horsemen of World War III, and then, of course, my wife and I will hang around, and we can meet. Well, I want to meet a lot of you guys. My father-in-law has been up there years, Irvin Baxter, and this will be my first trip up there. So we've had a lot of response. A lot of people are going to show up, and it's going to be awesome. And so I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in Cheney, Washington, this coming Saturday evening. Excuse me. So in an interview on The View, Vice President Kamala Harris said that she couldn't think of anything she'd have done differently than President Joe Biden did during the last 4 years. Now, my question to you is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? If you follow this stuff at all, if your heart is beating and you're breathing right now, think about that. Am I better off now than I was 4 years ago? Unless you've just got your head in the sand, the answer would be no, no, capital N-O, no. We're a lot worse off. Inflation is going crazy. housing markets are going nuts. I mean, it's just one thing after another. The price of groceries and gas, and I mean, everything just went through the roof. Well, I want you to think about this. A Kamala Harris administration, she says she wouldn't do basically anything different than what Joe Biden has done. Of course, it's the Biden-Harris administration, right? But prophecy aside, I want you to consider the issues of abortion. President Trump would say no, or at least, take it back to the states and the will of the people, which is exactly what he did. Biden would say 100% yes. Kamala Harris is saying, I wouldn't do anything different. Forcing the LGBTQ agenda upon America. Trump would say no. I heard him say the other night that we're not going to allow men and boys into girls' locker rooms. Biden would say an absolute 100% yes to that. Kamala Harris would as well. I'm going to get into some of this in great detail. She would advocate transgender access to bathroom and locker rooms based on their gender identity. Trump would say no, Biden would say yes. On regulation on businesses, Trump would say no, greatly decrease that. Biden said increase it. So would Kamala Harris. Military spending, Trump increased that because he was trying to build up our military from what had been so weakened under the Obama administration. Joe Biden would say, decrease, decrease, decrease. Foreign policy, Trump said America first. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, pro-globalism. Global warming, Trump would say, it's a hoax. And it is. And even if it is warming, it's not human-induced global warming which leads to climate change. And I've heard it said that we're actually coming out of an ice age, so it's good for it to be warming a little bit, but it's not human-induced global warming which leads to climate change. Trump said that's a hoax. That's correct. Biden says it's a fact. That's an absolute false narrative, just to be nice. The economy. Trump had a record stock market, a soaring economy. Under Joe Biden, totally out of control, right? We're all living through it. This is the Biden-Harris administration. Protect the borders. Trump, yes, absolutely. Build the wall. Biden, nope, absolutely not. Not building any wall. Second Amendment rights. Trump, yeah, he's pro-Second Amendment. Biden, heavy restriction. Kamala Harris, heavy restriction. She might say right now, I've got a gun. Tim Walz has a gun. No problem. But at the end of the day, she has been about gun restrictions on guns. Look at her track record, everybody. The list goes on and on. So she says, I wouldn't do anything different than Biden did during the 4 years. Well, of course, it was the Biden-Harris administration. And what would she do differently? Actually, I think it's going to be a little bit more diabolical than what it was during the last 4 years. So the Christian Post, one of the reasons I wanted to do this today, think about that. She wouldn't do anything different. What about Afghanistan? She's saying I wouldn't do anything different. Would she not do the Afghanistan pull out anything differently than that? What about the potential implementation of the central bank digital currencies in America? Donald Trump has said, if I become president, no central bank digital currencies, which we don't want. Hopefully you've heard our programs on that. But it was the Biden-Harris administration that supported a central bank digital currency in America. Okay? But she's saying, I'm not going to do anything different. I think the only thing she said she would do different is that she would have a Republican in her cabinet. Well, what does that mean? There's tons of Republicans that are rhinos, Republican in name only. She's not going to get anybody that's going to push against her agendas, right? However, the Christian Post published an article this morning, and as I read down through it, I thought, man, I've got to go on the radio with this, because the Christian Post said, abortion, parental rights, trans issues, what would a Kamala Harris victory look like? And if we got to November 5, or let's say November 6, now I don't think, with the way they're talking, if we know, sometime early in the morning, November 6th, who the president is, the new president, I will be shocked out of my mind. I hope it's that way. It's been that way my whole life, but you saw what happened in 2020. So we'll have to see. I mean, and at the end of the day, obviously we're asking God's will to be done in all of this, but we still need to talk about it, right? Because some of you guys still haven't voted yet. Some of you are still undecided, and we want to make sure that we get this stuff right. So according to the Christian Post, and I'm going to go through there and pull excerpts from several different things, but mainly this Christian Post article, a Harris victory has the potential to drastically impact American society. You can only imagine. Although the vice president's ability to implement her agenda, it's going to depend on the partisan makeup of Congress. Thank God we still have some of that in place. But with that caveat in mind, let's look at what Americans can expect in the event of a Harris win on November 5. So let's start with abortion here, because this is one of the things that Kamala Harris is just pounding the pavement on. Abortion, abortion, abortion. Harris's campaign website includes a statement promising that when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom or abortion nationwide, that she's going to sign it. Look how the terminology they use there. Restore reproductive freedom. I had somebody ask me yesterday about, Dave, what do you think about incest and rape and, different things where about the protection of the mother. Those are very, 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 very small percentages. The vast majority of abortions are pertaining to women who simply were promiscuous, got pregnant, and didn't want to have the baby. They didn't want to start a family yet, or that's mainly the vast majority of them is somebody got pregnant and they just don't want to have the baby. It's not because the mother's life is in danger, or they always bring up, well, what about a 10-year-old girl that got raped by her father, or somebody broke in and raped a little girl, and then you ogre person, you would make the girl carry the child for its entire term and things like that. That is such a small percentage of the overwhelming majority of the things that, people would get abortion. It's very, 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 very small percentage. So that's not the main reason people would get abortions. So I've had people come at me with that recently because I've been talking about abortions, and I'm very, very, very 100% pro-life. And so I know people who have tried to adopt a child, and they make it like you're just trying to, it's unbelievable. You got to go through all the paperwork and everything. And I understand you're going to get a child, but still, I've known good families who they made it almost impossible to adopt a child, but there are mothers who are not wanting to have them. Rather than abort, put them up for adoption or something. There are wonderful families that would love to adopt them. Do something, anything but kill a baby. Some people are making it out like that's just a normal thing. Well, just take its life. No big deal. Some people up to 9 months take the baby, carry it all the way to term, and then decide, I don't want this, and then take its life. I look at we have some people that go to our church, and they have the girl had twins. One of the children passed away, I believe passed away in the womb, and they told the mother that the other child would not be fully formed correctly. I don't want to get into detail because I don't want to embarrass anybody. However, the child, when she was born, came out and was not fully formed. The parents, the girl is now, there came a time, I think it was a year or two ago, when I was following them on Facebook, and the mother was saying She's, she can't keep her oxygen up, things like that. It looks like she's going to pass away. The baby with these types of abnormalities, I think they lived to like 2 years old at the most. And the girl was about 2 years old, and she was saying, we're going to give it to God, and we're going to allow them to take her off the machines because the machines were basically keeping her alive and a lot of different things. A horrific decision. The mom and dad, it just was ripping their guts out. We were praying. People all over the place were praying. They took the baby off the machines, and the child started to breathe on her own. Her oxygen started to go up. God performed an absolute miracle. The child is 4 years old today. I just saw pictures the other night on Facebook where they're trying to teach her how to walk, but she's not completely formed totally. But you ought to be around this child, folks. The love that comes from this child, if you hold her in her arms, she'll just hug on you and love you. And the parents and everybody in our church just wraps their arms around this little girl. She's just full of love, compassion, bubbly, joyful, just a bundle of love. The parents made the decision to have the child rather than to just, there's going to be an abnormality, let's just abort her. Pro-life. And that little girl, she fills our church with love whenever they come carrying her in. Awesome. And now the parents have a job of raising the child because she's not all formed like a normal child. But yet the parents, they don't miss a beat. Just keep on going, and they just love the child, and the child is just a bundle of love. So there's an excuse for everything, right? And I'm just being honest here. Pro-life. The Kamala Harris campaign doesn't mention any specific legislation by name when they talk about these things. The Woman's Health Protection Act already passed the Democratic-controlled U.S. House of Representatives in the 117th Congress during the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration. But the bill failed to become law due to the opposition from our evenly divided Senate. Democratic control of the Congress remains the only way that the Women's Health Protection Act has any chance of becoming law. So the effort to restore abortion nationwide, it comes as Democrats remain outraged over the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade in the 2022 Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision. The Dobbs ruling, it determined that the U.S. Constitution does not contain the right to abortion, and it reversed the Roe decision that legalized abortion nationwide. So following the Dobbs decision, there were several states that implemented pro-life protections. And the data compiled by the pro-life group, I think it was the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, it showed that 13 states have near total abortion bans on the books. Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia. And there are 4 additional states which have measures caught up in litigation: North Dakota, Utah, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. So an additional 3 states have laws that prohibit abortions after 6 weeks of gestation. That's Florida, Iowa, and South Carolina. Georgia has its heartbeat bill in court, and Nebraska and North Carolina have 12-week abortion bans in place, while Arizona bans abortion after 15 weeks. So even without the Women's Health Protection Act, referendums in Arizona, Florida, Missouri, Nebraska, South Dakota, this year could roll back pro-life protections and in their respective states. So if approved by voters, the ballot measures would amend the state constitutions to establish a right to abortion. Referendums are also on the ballot in Colorado, Maryland, and Nevada, listed among the 26 states and the District of Columbia that have few to no protections for unborn babies. That's horrific. Well, meanwhile, voters in New York, they'll vote on establishing an equal rights amendment, which adds reproductive health care to a list of protected characteristics under state law. If it's approved, the measure would effectively create a right to abortion in that state. Most recent available polls show that the pro-abortion referendums have majority support in Maryland, New York, Florida, South Dakota, and Arizona, while only achieving plurality support of 46% in Missouri, 45% in Nebraska. So with the exception of Florida, where the proposed constitutional amendments must clear a 60% threshold to pass, it'll only take the support of a simple majority of voters for the pro-abortion ballot measures to become law. So there are people all over the United States that are pushing for pro-abortion. And obviously there's some states that are fighting against that. So according to the Christian Post, Kamala Harris says that there are no religious exemptions in national abortion law if the law is elected. So if she's elected. So Vice President Kamala Harris has said that she opposes any concessions on a national abortion law if she becomes president, and she's rejecting any proposal that would include possible religious exemptions. What in the world happened? Well, in an interview with NBC News' Haley Jackson, Kamala Harris was asked about her plan to pass a federal law legalizing elective abortion nationwide. Jackson said, well, if you win, it's entirely possible that Congress will be controlled by Republicans. So what specific concessions would you be willing to make in order to get something done on abortion access as soon as possible? Well, Kamala Harris, she said, well, by denouncing the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022 and the subsequent passage of several state laws, that ban abortion is nearly all circumstances. Abortion in nearly all circumstances. So I tell you what, I know we're coming up to a break. We're getting into a lot of heavy detail here today, but I want you to hear what happens just after the break, because this is going to affect America that we're living in should Kamala Harris become president.
I am so excited to finally get to reveal One Source Network.
There's a difference in a conservative network and a true Bible-believing, Bible-teaching conservative network. Man, this is going to be awesome.
The Lord has had his hand in this so much. It's been incredible. It's been hard to doubt what God's doing because we've seen him move and do this.
One source exists because of the one.
We need truth coming our way, and we need to get it from one source.
One Source Network will be a key resource.
A network where you can get all of the information that you're looking for. One source.
We'll see you on the One Source Network.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
What would America look like under a Kamala Harris presidency? Well, in an interview with NBC Haley Jackson, Kamala Harris pointed to the multiple times abortion measures have been on the ballot since Roe was struck down and have resulted in victories for the pro-choice side. And Kamala Harris said, I know that there are members of the United States Congress who are well aware that their constituents are in favor of the very fundamental principle that a woman should be able to make decisions about her own body. Now, again, when you talk about women making a decision for their own body, if they were making a decision for their own body, they would be the one that died, not the baby. Think about that. So when I've heard her make that statement over and over and over again. If I'm making a decision for my body, I'm the one dying, right? She's saying, oh, yeah, I'm making decisions for my own body. It's not what it is. They're making a decision for a baby's body. And she says that women should be able to make decisions for their own body, or to take, in other words, she's saying women ought to be able to make decisions about taking a baby's life and not have her government tell her what to do. That was Kamala Harris. Well, of course, the interviewer, Jackson, she asked if it were a question of pragmatism when dealing with the Congress and what concessions would be on the table, and she cited religious exemptions as an example. Kamala Harris replied, I don't think we should be making any concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions for your own body. So the center, my point in all of this is saying, the Center for Baptist Leadership, he denounced Harris's comments with the group labeling them absolutely chilling. And he says this, listen very closely, everybody. He said, Kamala Harris says that she does not believe in religious exemptions for abortion. But the center tweeted this. This means that all Christian hospitals, there are Christian hospitals out there that are very ethical and say, we will not perform an abortion. This means that all Christian hospitals, healthcare providers, and businesses, etc., would be forced to provide or cover abortions if Kamala Harris has her way. And it would be the end of the First Amendment and religious liberty for all of those institutions as we know it. Think about that. And America in a Kamala Harris presidency. Now I want to go to trans issues, because a lot of parents are dealing with, I just heard a caller this morning on the way to work. Before I ever put this program together, I heard a caller on a radio program that I listen to on the way to work most mornings, and she was saying that she had a child who was on a ball team that a boy came and they were wrestling with this situation in their high school. And their daughter was on a team. The boy was saying he was a girl and wanted to participate on her, I think it was a basketball team or a volleyball team. And the mother was very perplexed. I know how I would be. Thank God my kids are out of school and I don't have to deal with it. But if my kids were in school, I'd be going to the principal, I'd go to the school board, I'd do whatever I had to do to keep my daughter from going into a locker room with some young boy. You say, oh, Dave, that's never going to happen. Just hold on a minute. The Harris campaign, their website details the candidate's intention to fight to pass the Equality Act to enshrine anti-discrimination protection for LGBTQI plus Americans in healthcare, housing, education, and more into law. So like the Women's Health Protection Act, the Equality Act passed the Democratic-controlled House in the 117th Congress, but it stalled in the Senate. Ryan T. Anderson, the president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, is one of the several critics of the Equality Act. I'm a critic of the Equality Act. And he is warned of its implications for religious liberty. He expressed concern ahead of its impending passage in the House in 2021 that the legislation sacrifices the equality, safety, and privacy of women while privileging men who identify as women. So he says this, and listen closely, because many of you may be facing this. Should Kamala Harris win November 5, she's going to be pushing for this. It passed through the House and it stalled in the Senate. But what happened if it would have made it through the Senate? Think about this. And your kid is in a kindergarten through 12 even. You say, oh, Dave, it'll never happen in America. Don't you think so? And so Ryan Anderson, he says this, and I'm quoting, if this bill becomes law, the Equality Act, they'd have a civil right to spend the night. Now, a transgender, let's say a 14-year-old boy decides he's a girl. a 16-year-old boy in high school decides he's a girl. If this bill became law, that boy who decides he's a girl would have a civil right to spend the night in a battered women's shelter. Let's say he's 25 years old. To disrobe in a woman's locker room. Now, I'm talking about, you're going to find out how old this is, and compete on women's sports teams. Listen at this, everybody. Even children at the kindergarten through 12th grade public schools. Now, I don't know how you would react to that, but me, even as a Christian minister, I'd go to every school board meeting. I'd go to the principal. I would not stop until this didn't happen in my school. No way. Never going to happen with my kids or my granddaughters. So Anderson also warned that, I'm talking about down to kindergarten, everybody. First grade, second, I'm talking about kids that are completely, their mind is like a sponge. They're in their multiple years. Imagine back when you were in 5th or 6th grade. Or when you started junior high and you started having to change into gym clothes, and you're a young female, and a male decides he's a girl, and they allow him to start coming into the girls' locker rooms. All you mothers and fathers that have young girls, think about this. This could very soon become a reality. This is not complete hyperbole. It's hypothetical now, but these people are pushing for this. Anderson goes on to warn that medical doctors, secular and religious, whose expert conclusion is that sex reassignment procedures are misguided, would now run afoul of our civil rights laws. If passed, the Equality Act could nullify laws and regulations in 26 states banning some or all types of gender transition procedures on youth exhibiting gender dysphoria, and measures in 26 states requiring athletes to compete on teams that correspond with their sex instead of their stated gender identity. So, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, the good old state of Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming have both types of laws in place. So Alaska and Kansas only have prohibitions on trans-identified male athletes competing in women's sports, while Georgia and Nebraska only have laws banning the performance of some or all types of gender transition surgeries in minors. You guys, some of this stuff leaves me speechless. The reason I read 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 9 in the beginning is because it says in the end times, perilous times will come. And if you read down through there, it's like things are going to be actually the complete opposite in society of what they should be. And these are the things, when I was in high school, junior high, I had to change out for gym class. Millions of you did too. And I never dreamed that I would have number one, most of these are boys going into girls' locker rooms. I would say there's almost a 0.1% chance that a girl's going to do that in a guy's locker room. But I know that the vast majority of them are guys that are wanting to go into a girl's locker room. And so they'll say, hey, I'm a girl, I'm transitioning. And Kamala Harris, Joe Biden is wanting them to be able to go into the girls' locker rooms. This is insane. I'm just going to be honest here. This is the complete opposite of a moral compass, the complete opposite of a normal, rational thinking mind, everybody. I'm almost kind of speechless. What do you say to this? And this is some of the stuff we could be facing under a Kamala Harris. Again, it passed through the House, everybody, and it stalled in the Senate. But you say, but oh, my vote doesn't matter. Oh, yes, your vote does matter. And certainly we need to pray for God to keep his hands upon all this stuff, because it's to think of it as horrific. Okay, now I also need to get into that Harris is calling for the elimination of the Senate filibuster. What in the world is going on here? First, I got to mention First Cup Coffee. You know, First Cup, they're a Christian-owned Patriot coffee company. We've sold so much of their coffee. It's great coffee. I've got friends all over the United States that have purchased it. These guys are a great Christian-owned Patriot coffee company out of the great state of Texas. They've got many, many, many different roasts to choose from. Each one's named after a specific piece of American history. Me and Doug like Boston Common. We have all of them upstairs in our coffee room. But you can get one of their roasts by going to firstcup.com. Use code Endtime to get 10% off. If you subscribe, they'll give you an additional 10% off. Go to firstcup.com. Use code Endtime to get 10% off today. Okay. So Kamala Harris also is calling for eliminating our Senate filibuster. You say, what in the world, the Senate filibuster? Well, she's called for the eliminating the Senate filibuster. It was during I think it was Wednesday's CNN town hall. The filibuster, it's a long-standing tradition and a tactic used to delay or prevent a vote on a measure from passing on the Senate floor. And it's just part of it. Well, while speaking with Harris's tough talk about codifying Roe v. Wade, CNN's Anderson Cooper asked Kamala Harris how she would get a measure passed to codify Roe v. Wade when the filibuster is such a hurdle to passage. He said, let me ask you, and I'm quoting here, Anderson Cooper said, let me ask you, Kamala, you've talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. That would obviously require 60 votes in the Senate, a majority of the Senate. If that's not possible to codify in the House, what would you do? She said, well, I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you. She's talking about eliminating the filibuster, everybody. Now, the Democrats have used the filibuster in times past, but now when they want to get things passed, well, let's talk about eliminating it, right? So I know we're coming up to a break. We'll talk about more of that on the backside, but man, life in a Kamala Harris America, yikes. We'll just have to see what happens here on the backside of the break.
A reminder of the breaking news this hour. At least 22 people are reported to have died in a strike in Gaza.
The rise of Islam.
I'm trying to bring answers for so many families desperately.
Is the Israel-Hamas-Iran conflict World War III? So let's talk about the four horsemen. What do these horses symbolize? These are the four spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. In the end time, the true people of God will not be weak, anemic, and defeated. These prophesied events are revealing we are quickly approaching the time of the Great Tribulation right now.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/screen. Go to endtime.com/screen or call 800-ENDTIME.
The Roman government controlled the world, so many people were looking for a different Messiah, a rescuing Messiah. Remember the story of the woman at the well. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. And Jesus said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. Jesus very clearly stated that he was God and that he was the Messiah. We're even more blessed because we haven't seen those things, but yet we believe. When Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He knew every one of these prophecies had to be fulfilled. He said, it is finished.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/revealed. Go to endtime.com/revealed or call 800-ENDTIME.
Welcome back, everybody. And you know, when we talk about Harris wanting to get rid of the filibuster, or potentially talking about it, she has previously called to end the filibuster, but for a different reason. During her 2020 presidential campaign, Kamala Harris said that she would back ending the filibuster to pass the radical. You remember the Green New Deal? And it was essentially a far-left socialist wish list. She was talking about, well, if we can't get it through, we need to end the filibuster to get that thing across the finish line. To end the filibuster, just to get one of their agenda items across the finish line. You guys, come on. Some of the stuff almost kind of leaves me speechless. And, you know, again, you're going to either vote for a Donald Trump or a Kamala Harris. Let's face it. That's where we're at. And you know, man, I'm going to move on to Israel. I'll leave that one there. According to her campaign website, and you say, well, I thought you were talking about in America under a Kamala Harris. America and Israel are intertwined. We are glued at the hip with super glue all the way to the end time. The Bible prophesies that. Israel's carried away on the wings of a great eagle, where she is nursed in her place for times and half a times. That's the United States of America and Israel being glued together, super glued together, all the way to the Battle of Armageddon. Israel and the United States. So it should be very important to us. What is the mindset of the President of the United States towards Israel? According to her campaign website, Vice President Kamala Harris will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and she will ensure Israel always has the ability to defend itself. Okay. Following the terrorist attacks on October 7, 2023, Israel's been determined to eradicate Hamas in Gaza. Okay. The terror attacks have set off a period of prolonged conflict in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank, many different places. Like Trump, Harris believes that the war must end. At a debate with Trump last month, Harris insisted that the way that it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. Okay. Red flag, ding, 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 the bell goes off. Ceasefire? A ceasefire would be awesome for Hezbollah and Hamas, but horrible for Israel. Why would somebody say, oh, Israel's got to ceasefire? Because remember, Kamala Harris says, I wouldn't do anything different than what Joe Biden did. And so Joe Biden has pushed for a ceasefire. Anthony Blinken is over there today pushing for a ceasefire and talking, we need a ceasefire. We need to get the hostages out. I agree we need to get the hostages out. The hostages are now starting to testify about the females, about some of the horrific things that those demonic people done to them while they were hostages. And so, yeah, we need to get the hostages out, dead or alive. But the ceasefire, that allows the enemy to rearm, to reposition, to gain strength, to get resources, and then continue to fight another day. A ceasefire would be one of the worst things that could happen. Well, this is what Kamala Harris is pushing for that. She also expressed support for a two-state solution, remember, when on the debate the other night. She outlined her vision as one where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity that they so rightly deserve. I'm quoting Kamala. So while Kamala Harris has repeatedly proclaimed support for Israel, she invited criticism for declining to attend a speech. Remember when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before Congress back in the summer? Kamala Harris didn't even attend the speech. She's the Vice President of the United States. And Israel is our greatest ally on the planet. Israel is our bulwark of defense against Iran and any other Arab proxy, terrorist proxy that would try to harm the United States. Israel is the bulwark of defense. We should arm them to the teeth and support them in every way possible. So, Kamala Harris is saying she didn't even attend the speech of Benjamin Netanyahu when he spoke at Congress over the summer. Also, the Biden-Harris administration has said, well, we will stand with Israel on one hand, and we have sent our THAAD missile defense system over there, but we're right here a couple weeks before the election. So, hey, it looks good. It's a good move. It's a good tactic to get reelected, to now start supporting Israel in every way, in the nth degree. However, early on, the Biden administration, when Donald Trump was in office, he hammered Iran with sanctions. And he was crippling them economically, and he was keeping them from supporting their terrorist proxies and from being able to continue on building a nuclear weapon, supposedly. Hammering them with sanctions. Joe Biden came in, lifted the sanctions, and was allowing Israel to support Hamas, Hezbollah, their terrorist proxies that are fighting Israel. So on one hand, the Biden-Harris administration says, hey, we're supporting Israel. On the other hand, they're lifting the sanction also off of Israel's principal enemy, Iran, and allowing them to now, I'm talking about tens and tens of billions of dollars, allowing that to flow into their coffers, supporting Israel, or supporting the proxies that are fighting Israel. And what we should have done is left the sanctions on Israel and leave them hammered down. Sanctions, crippling their economy so they couldn't support these terrorist proxies. That's not what they did. The Biden administration, well, Kamala Harris has said, I'm going to do the same stuff Joe Biden was doing. I wouldn't change a thing. So very, very important that we understand in the end time, we want somebody in the White House that will stand by Israel against the world government. I did a little research today also to bring up another subject here, and that is the Pact for the Future, the United Nations, the Pact for the Future that was just signed, which will strengthen the United Nations' efforts towards being a world governing body. And did a little research, and Kamala Harris, we entered into that. We supported the signing of the Pact for the Future under the Biden and Harris administration, strengthening world government, because the current administration is very pro-world government. Kamala Harris is pro-United Nations, pro-international institutions, pro-multilateralism. She's pro-world government. So you don't have to wonder what you're going to get. This is a very interesting election here, because both candidates, you know what you're going to get. Kamala Harris said, I'm not going to pretty much do anything different than Joe Biden would do. He's pro-world government. Donald Trump, he's anti-world government. He was pulling us out of the World Health Organization. The Biden and Harris administration pushed us back into the World Health Organization. And you know that they're trying to get the power to be able to declare an emergency worldwide and lock the world down. The World Health Organization wants the power to be able to do that. We don't want them having that power. I don't want some foreign entity telling me I got to wear a mask and I got to stay at home and isolate and take a vaccine shot and all this other stuff. They'd have us taking vaccine shots every other day if they could, which I would not do, by the way. And so I just wonder how it's going to be. Now, I'm not saying Kamala Harris is going to get elected. I want what God wants. If God wants a Kamala Harris situation in America to bring America to their knees, maybe a Biden administration wasn't bad enough, But whatever God's will is, I want to see a spiritual revival here in America. But I just want to educate everybody on what's going on here, because if you like living under the Biden administration, the decision's easy. If you don't like living under the Biden administration, the decision is also easy. And so we need to think about that. Another thing I was going to talk about here was the Supreme Court. I don't know if I'll have time to get through all of it. But of course, the Supreme Court, with them talking about the potential of maybe packing the Supreme Court to try to get it in favor of liberalism and the Democratic platform and everything they're trying to do. And then, of course, the economy. Think of okay, simple. We're now under the Biden-Harris administration. Are you happy with the way the economy is? Are you happy with skyrocketing grocery prices, with skyrocketing energy prices, skyrocketing prices, period, skyrocketing with inflation? It's so high you can't even see over the top of it. And so the economy. And now she's promising to provide all kinds of money for people to buy homes and all these kind of things. But you understand, the government has nothing to give you. The government can, but what they take from somebody else. The government doesn't produce anything. So if they give you something, somebody has to pay for that. If the government gives you something, the taxpayers are going to pay for that. Say, hey, we got free money from the government. Oh, no, we didn't. Somebody's going to pay for that down the line. You say, well, all the rich people are going to pay for it. Folks, if Elon Musk, or let's say somebody who's has $1 billion business, if prices rise for them, their business, the products they sell to everybody else, the middle class, those prices go up to pay for the increase they have to pay. Everybody needs to understand how this stuff works. So if the government's going to give you something, you're probably going to end up paying for it many times over. So we need to think about our decisions. I was thinking about all this, especially the abortion and the trans agenda and all this other stuff. I don't want to see young boys in these young girls' locker rooms. Those kids are innocent still. I should say most of them, especially in kindergarten through 5th, 6th grade, junior high, high school. Leave the kids alone. Let them have a normal life. Don't push your radical agendas on these kids. Let's get America back to the way we want it. Let's put God first, have a moral compass in America, and let's have the America that we want, not the one that's trying to be shoved down our throat. God bless.